Have you ever heard somebody voice an opinion that you kind of agree with, but they say it in such a way that makes you want to disagree? I feel like this has kind of been a bit of the discourse around Pokemon Legends ZA. This game is pretty fun. If you want my opinion on it, you're clicking on this video, you're like, oh, what does this random guy on the internet think about this new Pokemon game that came out, over a week ago? Like, there it is. I think it's pretty fun. I think it's a fun game. If you want to, listen to me talk a little bit more about what exactly I like about the game, I will definitely do that. Obviously, this is a review, but I also kind of want to talk about why I hate people who really hate this game. I feel like a lot of the ways that, people talk about, specifically this game, at least, is kind of, insane to me. So, I just want to, shoot that down a little bit. This video is going to be, in part, me saying what I like and dislike about Pokemon Legends ZA, because honestly, there is stuff in this game to dislike. But also, some people are saying some insane things about this game that are either untrue or don't matter. Anyway, getting all this out of the way, let me actually tell you what I think about Pokemon Legends ZA. First of all, full transparency, I am running this on a Switch 2, and it runs pretty good. After my experience with Legends Arceus and Pokemon Scarlet and Violet on the original Nintendo Switch, I was running it on one of the older generations of that, but it was, pretty bad. It did not run well. Pokemon Legends ZA is really the third Pokemon game that's really supposed to be, a home console Pokemon experience, and I think it's the second one that really is able to, follow through with it. Pokemon Sword and Shield feels like a bigger 3DS game. It doesn't do a lot with the power that the Switch provides. It shares more in common with Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, Pokemon Sun and Moon, than it does with Legends Arceus, Scarlet Violet, and now Pokemon Legends ZA. Anyway, the core gameplay is fun. I was kind of worried about it. I do like the traditional Pokemon battling, so when they showed off this new battle system, I was worried. I didn't know if I would like it. It looked super spammy to me, and at least for the story playthrough, it kind of still is, but it's fun enough where I didn't mind some of aspects of that, and I think it really shines through when you battle the Rogue Megas. Battling the Rogue Megas was a lot of fun. I liked the way that you have to dodge and command your Pokemon at the same time. It was a good evolution of some of the stuff going on in Pokemon Legends Arceus. When you're battling trainers, it's kind of whatever. You're kind of just mashing your buttons. But I suppose, to be fair, trainer battles in the other Pokemon games, especially recently, don't exactly have that much challenge to them. You do just kind of click on what's my biggest base power move. The animations are generally more detailed. You could tell when they really wanted the animation to look good. I think some of the individual animations in just the cutscenes or whatever, they probably look the best in this game, but that's only mostly for those cutscenes. You could still kind of feel that Pokemon game for jank on some of the parts that they didn't maybe get to focus on quite as much. It still is kind of awkward. Anyway, that besides, the new animations actually did make the characters feel a lot more lifelike. It added a lot to, I think, some of the characters' personalities and whatnot. They did a pretty good job with it as a whole, I would say. The game is also, more difficult than some recent games, so I wouldn't really call it hard at all. When people were online saying oh my god, this game is actually difficult, I didn't believe them. People said that the Elite Four and Shining Diamond, Brilliant Pearl, or Brilliant Pearl, Shining Diamond, I don't remember which one it was. Either way, people are oh man, the Elite Four in this game is actually hard. And I'm dude, people just be saying anything online these days. That's crazy. It's not very difficult. This game is definitely a step up in difficulty, but I wouldn't say it's hard. It's not a very difficult game. I think it's kind of what you would expect for a Pokemon game. I am surprised that the difficulty translated over pretty I wouldn't say 1-to-1. This game is harder, but in a way that doesn't feel unnatural. This game is not this insane difficulty spike between this game and Scarlet and Violet. It's pretty close. The wild areas are pretty fun, if not a little small, especially later on in the game when you unlock more wild areas. The differences in environment is a nice shakeup from the rest of the city, and the interactions with the wild Pokemon are taken from Legends Arceus, where they're gonna attack you or whatever. And maybe it doesn't make so much sense for these Pokemon being in the middle of a city or whatever where there's a lot of people, but it was a fun game playing thing wise. It's something that I liked from Legends Arceus, where you're kind of weaving around trying to dodge attacks from Pokemon. that is, I think, when these Pokemon Legends games have been the most fun. So I hope that, you know, whenever they do the next Pokemon Legends, like, we're supposed to be going to Galar for that, like, I don't know, Pokemon Legends Eternatus, or whichever Pokemon they're gonna, you know, put it around. I hope that this kind of gameplay style comes back. I think they did a pretty good job with it in this one. It's basically lifted straight from Legends Arceus, and I think they did a good job of that there. They did a good job with it here. I like the game, you know, and you're, especially with, you know, controlling the Pokemon as you're also trying to dodge attacks. I think that is a lot of fun. It makes the game not as, like, I'm going to mash this button over and over again. I also like the return of Alpha Pokemon. I think the differences in Pokemon sizes kind of cool, but it doesn't matter that much unless you have, like, these Alpha Pokemon where you really get to see the difference, right? If you have, like, you know, a smaller Pokemon and a larger Pokemon, you're not really going to notice that much of, like, the individual, like, species, unless you have a bunch of them, like, right up next to each other, and even then, it could be kind of hard to see. So I like when there's this huge variation, this huge distinction between the Alpha Pokemon and the normal Pokemon. I like that they are also a lot more aggressive. It adds, you know, a lot of flavor to the gameplay when the wild areas, or even just, like, the, you know, general overworld spawns of the Alpha Pokemon. It makes it so, especially in the early and mid-game, you actually do have to kind of stay on your toes. You have to be careful about these kind of things, and it makes exploring a lot more fun, especially, again, in the early and the mid-game when you're just kind of walking around doing whatever. It imposes a challenge on you that you are realistically not going to be able to overcome, especially in the early game. So it plays as you're kind of, like, running away from this, like, boss, and later on, you could come back to it when you have a higher level team to either try to defeat it or catch it. I like a lot of the new Mega Pokemon designs. There's a few I'm not the biggest fan of, particularly Mega Pyroar, and as much as I do actually like it, Mega Starmie, I understand why people don't like it. I think it's very funny, but, you know, you're making a joke Mega for a Pokemon that people legitimately really like, and a Pokemon that I actually like a lot. I would have preferred for it to be a cool Mega, but it's pretty funny, so personally, I could overlook it. To get into a little bit of my problem with some criticisms about this game, I don't think you have to be a big fan of all these Megas, right? But to say that, oh, it's lazy because they only did these, like, handful of changes to it, or, like, oh, it's just, like, it doesn't have the same spirit, you know, as the original batch of Mega Pokemon. And I'm like, dude, they have mostly, like, similar design choices. You look at, you know, some people were, like, saying that they didn't like Mega Meganium because it's like, oh, all they did is they put, like, flowers around its neck. I'm like, people love Mega Charizard, like, both the Mega Charizards, and, like, what, one, they changed, like, the spikes on its head or something, and then one is like, oh, we're gonna make it black because everyone loves, like, shiny Charizard, right? Mega Blastoise, incredible Mega design, is like, they just slap another cannon on it, and it's like, you know, we call it a day. And people are, like, looking at the new Megas, and they're watching them, like, be like, okay, like, they're only adding, like, one thing to it, or they're only, like, changing one or two aspects about it. And I'm like, it's like all the same. You know, it's the same, like, design philosophy around most of them. So, again, I think it's fine. I think the Mega Pokemon are acceptable at the worst, and some of them are really cool, and I like them a lot. Something that I didn't like about Legends Arceus, and I'm very glad that we don't see that in Legends EA, is the Pokedex. Initially, when playing Legends Arceus, I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. You have to do research, because you're making the first Pokedex. You gotta do research on the Pokemon, you know? And then it quickly became very tedious and tiresome, and I didn't want to do it anymore. I like that in ZA, we're not doing that anymore. We are back to the normal Pokedex. You catch the Pokemon, and then you have the full Dex entry. I do kind of wish there was a little bit of that aspect, because I do think it really encouraged people to explore and use different Pokemon, and that's something that I think Pokemon games aren't necessarily the best at. Normally people are just going to pick their favorite and just stick with them for the whole game. But I do like that Legends Arceus, to complete the Pokedex, was like, okay, well, you have to make this Pokemon watch it use, like, Bite 10 times or something. And that is a good idea to getting people to explore and experiment more, especially if, like, the dex isn't that large. And I think the dex size is pretty good for this game, so I do kind of wish there was just a little bit of it. It doesn't have to be as big or tedious as Legends Arceus. It could be like, see this Pokemon use an electric-type move 5 times in the battle, and that's it. Like, that's the whole thing, and that's how you finish the dex entry. I think that could have added a little bit more fun to the game, encouraging this experimentation a little bit more, like what was seen in Arceus, but I'm not going to complain about it too much. I do prefer this system over, how it was implemented in Arceus at least, but I do think that there's a happy middle ground that we could reach, and that they did not try to attempt that. Instead of the traditional gym structure that we have for, the other mainline Pokemon games, because Legends ZA is technically a spin-off, but it's also technically a mainline game. Instead of the gym circuit, we have now the ZA Royale, and it's pretty fun. I actually do like it. This is all building off of stuff that Legends Arceus was doing, where, you're trying to sneak around and start a Pokemon battle on your own terms. You get advantage. It's, kind of like the Persona system of when you're running around in like a Persona dungeon, and then you attack first from behind, you get advantage, you get to do stuff. But if the enemy, the shadows, hit you first, then they get a free turn in the beginning. It's similar to that, and I think it is a fun way to make the way you start the battle more engaging than just being seen by somebody and then they're like, oh, we're gonna fight now, and then whoever has the highest speed gets to go first. The point system is pretty fun with the bonus cards. I like the bonus cards. It makes you think more about the way that you're gonna battle. Again, one of my biggest fears of the battle system going into this was that you just kind of click the same things over and over again, but there's, different bonus cards where it's like, oh, you want to use super effective moves of grass type. You want your grass type moves to be super effective, or your poison, your ground, or whatever. So it makes you want to use certain move types over others. That being said, I do understand that, I was talking about, I wish that they would influence you to kind of explore more with different Pokemon, and that they're kind of doing that with the bonus cards, but I don't think it's as elegant as a system as the, Legends Arceus Pokedex. There's kind of a reason, an in-universe reason for doing this, and it makes sense that, if you use the Pokemon in your Pokedex, your encyclopedia of Pokemon, you will learn more about said Pokemon, right? But for the bonus cards in the ZA Royale, it's just kind of arbitrary. It's just what you pick up, and then in the moment it's annoying because if you don't have a Pokemon that could use a certain type of move, it's okay, well, I guess this card is just worthless to me now. Thankfully you could switch it out, but I don't know, it's annoying. I wish the experimentation, the push for experimentation was not in the battle cards, it was within, the Pokedex. It makes more logical sense in terms of a lore reason, and it makes, I think, it kind of less annoying to pick up these cards in the ZA Royale, because you're probably not going to change your team in the middle of the ZA Royale. At least that's what I did. So, my team, I didn't really have anybody that do any good poison type moves for a majority of the game. So I would get use 3 poison type moves, and I'm like, dude, I don't have poison type moves, and then the ones that I could get suck. I don't want to use these. So I would always try to switch those cards out or whatever. So that was a little frustrating. Again, thankfully there's a lot of cards lying around, so you're not going to kind of get stuck with a bunch of cards that you can't use. But again, it's just kind of tedious. Not even tedious, it's just annoying to interact with. Pokemon Legends ZA is a pretty good mix of, the core gameplay of Legends Arceus and the more traditional Pokemon games with a new battle mechanic, but it does suffer presentation-wise. I do kind of want to talk about that as a separate chunk, because I think a lot of what people are saying about this game, the negative stuff, is around the presentation. And this is kind of what I was talking about earlier, where I'm I agree with the negative reaction to some of the presentation and some of the design choices in terms of, again, the visuals. But it doesn't really matter that much. For me, the core gameplay, it's this very important thing. If the game is fun, for the most part, I'm not really gonna care too much about the visuals of it. I don't really care if they reuse the same tree asset twice. I don't really care. I'm not I'm not the kind of guy where I'm oh, they don't individually render every blade of grass or whatever. They reuse the same tree model twice. I can't believe it. This game is terrible. It doesn't matter. The visuals don't matter in that sense. These are visual things I think you really kind of have to be fishing for. You have to look out. I didn't really notice that the trees were being reused until I read somewhere online that they were. And then, my conclusion of that was okay, so what? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I think, a lot of the negative reactions to this game are kind of the cinema sins of gaming. where you're making a big deal out of nothing, basically. That being said, there are things that this game actually needs to get right. So, first of all, this game needs voice acting. For the 3DS games, when you're on this small cartridge and you're working on this tiny handheld device that doesn't run things that are nearly as powerful as consoles at the time, I get the reason we have no voice acting. Even to an extent between Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee and Sword and Shield, I could kind of get, for the most part, why those games didn't have voice acting. That being said, this is a console game. This is a modern-day, current-gen console game where a large chunk of the game is, this story, and you're trying to, go around, there's a mystery of the rogue, megas, and then you have all these different characters. There needs to be voice acting at this point. It doesn't have to be for everything. Every character interaction does not need to be voice acted. But some of it should be. It's really awkward to see these fully rendered, completely animated cutscenes with absolutely zero voice acting. It at least needs it for that section. People talk about the price of this game in this way that is really stupid and annoying, and this is probably my biggest problem with the criticism of this game. People talk about the price like you have to buy literally everything about the game for this game, and I'm like, no, not really. People will talk about the base game for Nintendo Switch 2 is $70. You don't even have to buy that version. You could buy the Switch 1 version and play it on your Switch 2, but yeah, we'll give you a little leeway. It's $70, not $60. People will include the price of the Nintendo Switch 2 console, which is $450. So they're like, oh, this game, if you want to play this game, it's $520. And first of all, no, you could buy the Switch 1 version and then just play it on the Switch 1, and you probably have the Switch 1 at this point. Second of all, you are not buying a Switch 2 just for this game. Most people will probably not be buying the Switch 2 just for this game. And it's kind of the same thing for some of the other stuff. They're like, oh, you have to get the online because there's the online thing. So if you really want to play the full game, you have to get the online. And the online is $12 a year. So, the game goes up from $520 to $532. And they're like, oh, well, then you also have to buy the DLC that doesn't come out till next year. And the only thing that you get for buying the DLC now is I think 2 in-game costumes or something. And I think it's $30 or something. So it's oh, that game is not, $532. It's actually $562, and I'm like, dude, at that point, why stop there? What about your electric bill to run the game on your console? What about the desk that you're sitting at to play, or the chair? And if you're not in a chair, then I don't know, the floor, your carpet that you're sitting on. And then, what about the house that you play the game? You gotta buy the house that you play the game on, obviously. And then, oh, there's the water that you drink while you play the game, or before that keeps you alive so you could play the game. And it's it's so stupid to me that this is being included in the price. If you want to say that the game is too expensive at $70, you should just say that the game is too expensive at $70. When you include all of these other things that are really stupid, it makes your argument less valid. And I agree that this game should not be $70. Let me be clear. I don't think any AAA game should be $70. That's kind of egregious, especially considering, the quality of a lot of these AAA games coming out. Dude, I don't want to pay $70 for that. I mean, I did pay $70 for this. I have the game, but it would be better if it was $60. That's just a fact. It's the same game, but it just costs less. It would feel a lot better to buy the game. But saying that the game is $70, too expensive at $70, is not the same thing as saying this game is basically $560 or $600 or whatever people were saying before. It doesn't sound as good on a thumbnail or whatever. It's really stupid. The game is $70, and it is a bit of a hard sell at $70. I did kind of mention this in my rant about people saying you have to buy the online for this game. There is a grain of truth to that. If you want to get the Kalos starter Mega Evolutions, which were, shown in the trailer, they look really cool, you do have to play the online ranked mode to unlock those. And I don't like that. I get why it's there. They want to incentivize people to play the online sections of this game, but I think it's not it. You should have done something else. There are other things that people could have wanted, but at the same time, I kind of get it. If they put on ranked rewards where it's oh, you get even 100 Ultra Balls. People who cares, dude? I don't care about 100 Ultra Balls. I could buy 100 Ultra Balls like in my game, right? It kind of has to be this big thing to draw people over to it. I think what they should have done is had like ranked like shiny Pokemon rewards, right? Where you get like a shiny Pokemon for placing, you know, what would they say, like K or higher, instead of the Mega Stones. They should not have locked the Mega Stones behind the rank reward. That should have been something that you could get along the game. I don't like the idea that any of the Mega Stones would be ranked rewards. So again, I understand why people were saying like, oh, you have to buy the online to get the full experience. But I don't know, the way that they phrase it is very disingenuous. Like, if you buy, I don't know, like, whatever the new Battlefield is, Battlefield 6 on, like, PlayStation or whatever, like, maybe I'm wrong, I don't have the game, but I'm pretty sure you still have to buy online, like, whatever PlayStation Online is, right? If you want to play the game online? And, you know, I might be tripping, maybe that's not true. But for a lot of, like, console games, it's kind of, like, an understood fact that if you want to play the online versions, you do have to, you know, purchase whatever the online subscription is, which is annoying. It's stupid. It's not criticism directly only to this game. It's just criticism of like console gaming as a whole. Again, it's a little disingenuous to say that this is part of the price, but there's definitely things to criticize about the way that they did it. Another thing people have been complaining about that I could sympathize with is the structures, the buildings looking kind of bad in this game. They're not fully modeled. For some reason, this whole... I'm not a game developer. I don't know if this is the norm, but it seems kind of crazy to me that the entire model of the city is like one model. So it makes sense why there's not a lot of details in the individual buildings, because your polygon is going to be huge. But, like, does the whole game have to be one model? It's, like, really weird, because you not have individually modeled the buildings. And if you do, it allows you to get more detail about the stuff. As of right now, the buildings kind of feel like boxes with stickers on them. And it's really weird sometimes. Like, you'll see, like, a balcony for, like, an apartment or something. But it's like a texture on the side of the building. There's not, like, an actual balcony or anything. It's really weird. And, you know, you're kind of looking around. I didn't notice it that much in the beginning, because I was noticing other things about the game. But, like, that's, like, really weird, right? It's not that big of a deal, because like it's not really going to affect you gameplay wise, right? There's no strategical or like gameplay bonus for being able to walk onto a balcony, or like people are complaining about the fact that you can't look into the windows. Like, there's no gameplay like incentive. There's nothing that like will enhance your gameplay by being able to look into a window. It doesn't matter. What goes on in the buildings does not pertain to you. It does not pertain to the gameplay experience. But I get that all these things, you know, kind of together with the textured balconies, the inability to look through windows, the inability to enter like buildings, basically, it kind of gives this feeling of, I don't know, like, I don't want to say soullessness because that's just not true. It feels either rushed or kind of careless. It gives the impression that the game is cheaper than it actually is. So while it's annoying that this exists, it's not that big of a deal. Would the game be better if it had balconies to the apartments? Would it be better if you could look into windows? Would it be better if you could go into the shop so you could access the menu to buy clothes in the shop rather than like from the door front? Like, yeah, it would be, like, a little bit. It would add more, like, flavor to the world and whatnot. But, like, it doesn't matter all that much. There's other issues that this game has that I think are more glaring than the fact that you can't walk into a building, that you can't look through a window, that the balconies are, you know, textured on. It doesn't matter that much. Spoken about only a little bit, actually, funny enough, I think is a much bigger problem than, you know, like, the windows being, you know, opaque, is that this game holds your hand. I wouldn't even say holds your hand. It puts you on a rail for like the first 2 hours. And for a lot of Pokemon games, I understand why they do this. Every Pokemon game is designed to be, you know, like literal baby's first Pokemon game. These are games primarily made for children, so I can't really complain about it too much. But what is so annoying about this is that the game kind of drops you into this world, and at the first, like, you know, in the beginning, it seems really, really big. The city seems quite large, and you want to explore it. They have all these different things laid around the city that literally shine to grab your attention. They go, oh, you want to pick that up. But the beginning hours of the game are like, no, you can't go that way. You have to go this way. And once it's over, the game, the whole world for, Lumia City really does actually open up. You can go basically anywhere, but it's really annoying. It's really annoying for those first few hours, especially because it's almost like they're dangling like a prize away from you, and they're going, no, you can't go there, you can't touch that. I would have liked for them to, instead of kind of doing it the way that they did, to allow the player to just kind of run wherever, and, people might say like, oh, then like, it's a children's game that they're going to lose their way or whatever. But the game gives you a map, and there is a big pointer on the map that tells you where to go. So I don't really think it's that big of a deal. Another thing that is like a legitimate problem in this game, and this is one that admittedly is a lot easier to fix, is the way that this day-night cycle is implemented. It is implemented horribly. I kind of praised a lot of the gameplay about, Legends ZA. I think this game is a lot of fun when you are actually playing the game and not listening to people talk to you about windows and grass and reuse tree assets. Like, the gameplay is actually a lot of fun. But the day and night cycle just kind of will periodically stop your game to an absolute halt, where there's this cutscene of, the city changing from day to night. And for the first few times, it's like, oh, this is really pretty. But then afterwards, you're like, oh, dude, I don't care about this anymore. And then if you're in the middle of a battle, it also interrupts the middle of the battle, and that's really stupid. It should not do that. If they made it so the change was more natural, like maybe when it turns from night to day and you get that, it's like, oh, the battle zones have deactivated. Like, first of all, it should not interrupt your battle. Second of all, it would, like, to only play that cutscene when you are, like, in a battle area. Because then it makes sense that the game stops and tells you this. Like, oh, we went from night to day, the battle zone is closed, right? And so there's this big announcement and it stops, right? If I am running around and I'm trying to catch Pokemon in one of the wild zones at night, or I'm in the middle of a battle with a Pokemon at night, and then it's like, oh, the battle zones are deactivated, it stops, like, my battle. It's, like, really annoying because you have to restart the battle, first of all, but it just interrupts the flow of whatever you're doing, and it should only do that, I think, if there's a legitimate reason to tell you that the battle zones are closed, because that's all that screen, like, serves a purpose for, right? Same thing when it's going from day to night. I could understand that one a little bit more, where it's like, oh, the battle zone is open, like, that is an announcement, and you might want to change what you're doing from like running around catching Pokemon to, okay, the battle area is open, I actually have to go, I need to, like, grind tickets or whatever. That makes a little bit more sense. I still wish that they didn't do it, that it was just like a notification that pops up on the screen when it happens, but it's an easy fix, I think. Like, I could see them rolling out an update that fixes this, and it'll be fine. Lumia City simultaneously feels too big and too small at the same time. The world looks the same everywhere you go. It's a city, so I could kind of get that to an extent. But a lot of real-life cities have a lot of differences in, like, architecture or whatever. It makes the game feel restrictive, like you're not in a very large area. It doesn't make Lumia City feel that big, because even if the map is technically quite large, it's a decent size. Everywhere looks the same. It all looks the same, so it doesn't feel like you're going anywhere new. I think, having more variety of buildings or more, like, variety in wild areas, at least early on, it would help the game feel a little bit more realized and less copy and pasted. This is like an actual problem with the visuals that I think they should have really gone into to work on more than, like, again, like, I don't know, the windows or whatever. It doesn't matter. The windows don't matter. I'm complaining about the windows all the time. And, like, the way that people complain about the windows. I'm complaining about the people complaining about the windows. But this is an actual thing that they should have worked on more. Either make the individual sections of the world more varied and actually make it longer. Not either. Do both. Like, Lumia City simultaneously is actually kind of small. So when you look at the full map, you're like, wow, I'm, like, not really having a lot of space to go, especially compared to, like, Scarlet and Violet. Another thing that I think really would have helped is if this game had rideable Pokemon. It's kind of weird to me that it doesn't. Maybe I'm stupid and there is a way to, like, ride certain Pokemon that you own, or even Pokemon that are lent to you. But to my knowledge, this is not something that exists. Rideable Pokemon were this gimmick in X and Y, and it didn't really amount to anything in that game. But it was still, like, a selling point. And then we had rideable Pokemon in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. I think another way to help the world feel a little bit better is if it's fun to traverse. When it comes to open world games, my thought around them is that if the world is not fun to explore, or is not fun to traverse, it should not be an open world. If there's not a lot to find, there's not like a lot of interesting things going on in the world, if it's very empty, it shouldn't exist. You're spending all this time in making this empty plane where the interaction is that the player has to run through it one time. It's really annoying. It's either that or they're going to fast travel and they're going to like skip all of this. If fast traveling is the preferable way to move around an open world, I think that sucks. It shouldn't really be that way. In your open world, I should either be looking forward to explore every single corner or just have fun getting through it. And as it is right now, this game doesn't have either of those things. And that's something that I think really should have been, thought about and included. To kind of talk about the visuals again, this is, I think, a visual thing that matters a lot more, at least to me, because it's a lot more noticeable at first glance than trees or windows. Are the NPCs. The NPCs should move around more, and there should just also be more. Lumia City is supposed to be this large city, but there's like only a few, maybe like 100 people in the whole thing. These streets should be busy. There should be a lot of like people moving around and whatnot. It makes Lumia City feel very empty, and it's really weird. They're trying to give this impression. Game Freak is trying to give this impression that Lumia City is this large, bustling city, when visually it's just not. One of the things that people talk about like the trees or like the textures of the game or like the windows is that like, oh, it's not immersive. And like, yes, it's not. But like, what about the NPCs? We got to talk about this because this is what you're going to see most of, like just running around. If you're running around, you might miss that the tree assets are being reused or that you can't look through the windows. But what you will notice is that there are no people on the streets. These people should be like moving around a lot more. They should be trying to like move from one place to another. You look at Mario Kart World and you're going around the open world. Like you see different cars going to and from places and they just kind of appear out of nowhere. Like even if they just popped in, that would have been kind of preferable. Like that alleyway, the alleyways in like Castelia City in Pokemon Black and White. Even something like that would have been preferable. Obviously, this doesn't have to be a thing in like the wild zones or the wild areas, but it should be in like the city streets, in the urban areas. The last thing that I do kind of want to mention in terms of like complaints is, again, it kind of falls in line with this idea of like things that don't really matter that much, that they're not there. But if it was there, it would just make the game better. Funny enough, it's actually a feature to remove something. You are not able to disable autosave in this game. It's really weird. It doesn't really have a good excuse for like not being there. I don't get why it's here, because autosave is always on by default in other Pokemon games. And that's fine. I don't think that's unreasonable to ask. Like, again, your target audience are like children. They'll forget to save their game, right? Having the autosave for those players is nice. But, maybe sometimes I want to reset after I did something. Like, oh, maybe I made like a terrible mistake or whatever. Or like, I messed up catching a Pokemon or whatever. I would like to have the autosave disabled then and like have more control over when my game is getting saved. It doesn't really matter that much. I get that this is mostly for a smaller group of people, but it's a feature. It's like being able to turn off a feature. I don't think that would be that big of an issue. And this is something that they could roll out in an update. But as of right now, it doesn't exist in the game, and it's just annoying. It's a frustration, a minor frustration that, kind of piles up. And I think that is kind of like a good way to represent a lot of this game. This game is kind of like a death by 1,000 cuts. The core gameplay is really fun. I like exploring Lumia City, but there's a lot of things around it that just make the game, that just kind of sour your experience a little bit. There's all these issues with just presentation. There's all these minor annoyances that just kind of bring the overall experience down. And it's not down enough to make the game unfun to play. The game is still fun, and I don't really regret playing it, but I could get why. But again, it's like what I was saying before. I get why people are so frustrated with this game. I think they're overblowing it. The way that people are voicing their opinion is really, first of all, obnoxious, but it's also super hyperbolic. Like, you are kind of misrepresenting a lot of the problems to make them seem bigger than they actually are. And again, to an extent, I get it, because you want these complaints to be heard, so you're going to try to make them super loud. But at the same time, it's not that big of an issue. You are kind of making a mountain out of a molehill. It's annoying to me, personally, at least. I don't know how annoying it is to other people, hearing people complain about, like, whatever this year's Pokemon game is. Like, yeah, we have DLC coming that they announced before the game even came out. And, I was afraid that it would leave this game feeling incomplete as an experience. But it's fine. Like, I could say confidently that this is a full game without the DLC, and if there was no DLC, or if I just never bought the DLC, I would still be happy with, my time playing Pokemon Legends EA. It's an annoyance, it's one of many, and it does kind of bring down on the overall mood of the game, but it doesn't matter that much. All of this rambling to say, Pokemon Legends EA is fine. It's pretty fun. Like, I don't really, give things like, X out of 10 grades, but I would give it like a solid 7. It's nothing to write home about that much. There's definitely things that get in the way of enjoying the game, but by no means is it like a bad experience.